Hello everybody, this is Danny Rabin from Marvin, and I want to talk to you a little bit about what I consider the Django shape for diminished chords. And this is a super useful thing for guitarists especially, and I call it a Django shape because it's really a two-finger thing if you're digitally challenged. There's a lot of mileage you can get from this simple shape. So it looks like this. I'm starting where I see it on the D string, and it's just a minor third shape, and then it repeats a tritone away, but it really gets you this very easy shape to trace. And if you want to trace it back to the bottom two strings, it's right here, like 7th fret, 5th fret, 6th fret, 4th fret, 6th fret, 4th fret, one note per string. So this sort of diminished arpeggio, if you analyze what it is, it's a diminished arpeggio where you take out the flatted fifth, right? So it's root, flatted third, jump all the way to the double flatted 7, or aka the 6th, and then root again, right? Now, when you invert that like a diminished chord, meaning move it up in minor thirds, play the same shape 3 frets higher, you sort of get the rest of the sound. You get that flatted fifth that was missing is now the second note in the arpeggio. And as you trace it up the neck, you get the full impact of a diminished chord. But you're skipping inside each one of these cells the flatted fifth. Now, alone, this doesn't get you that much. You don't know how to use it, because diminished chords are really the tension part of a cadence, right? Any cadence has tension and release, and diminished chords tend to be the tension part of that. So the question is how to put that in context, how to take that sound and realize what it needs to go to. And it can go to a bunch of things, but for now, the first thing we're going to talk about, and what this video is going to be, is how to use it in the context of major cadences. You can use it going to minor, you can use it going to dominant chords, but right now we're just going to try a major 7 Ionian type tonality and see how we can get into it. So, for simplicity's sake, we're going to put it in the key of C. Now, the chord that traditionally moves in, the diminished chord traditionally moves into a C chord, is a B diminished. A diminished chord built on the 7th degree. If you want to know what scale it comes from, there are two options, either the symmetric diminished or harmonic major. But those are big names, but the sound is, it's simpler than it looks, right? So if I just find that shape that contains a B note, right, and move it to an inversion of C major, I get these sounds. Now, again, those Django diminished things invert symmetrically, but the C major does not. I need to know those caged positions for C, right? C, 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 C. And now those diminished things act as something that moves into C. Now, I get the sound of these kind of, right? So I'm going up a diminished, down C, up a different diminished, right? Just inversion of the same thing, down C, right? Diminished. So traditionally people play these kind of shapes for diminished, but you can always So that's a nice sound, and it's a sound of a cadence. You can play it as chords. Right, diminished, 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 major, major, and as lines. In a 2-5-1, let's say, 2, Dorian, 5, I have that like G7, and on that. So instead of a 5 chord, you can always use that, right? Sorry. So that's sort of way one of thinking about this, right? As a B diminished. Now, In jazz, a lot of times there's another player, another type of diminished chord you have to contend with, and it's not the diminished chord built on the 7th degree. By the way, 7th, 2nd, 4th, or on the flat 6, right? Those inverts, they're the same. Those are all just substitutions for the 5 chord. Now, there is one diminished. So C can go to C diminished, itself diminished, and back to C. So it's a half step up, right? Now, that's the tool that Django uses most of the time when he pivots away from a major chord, and it gives it a little bit of a bluesy sound. Same shape, just instead of starting on the 7th, it's going to start on the root. So C diminished, moving to C. E flat diminished, moving to, again, same C, right? F sharp diminished, moving to C. And finally A diminished to C. So you can practice these in position. Right? A to C. C diminished to C major. E flat to C. Now, the thing you start realizing is that if you take those two diminished chords, right, B diminished and C diminished, and you just move them inverted, that gives you the symmetric diminished scale. The symmetric diminished scale is the notes of B diminished put upon the notes of C diminished, right? Those 4 and 4 make 8 notes that give you that sound of C symmetric diminished, right? C whole half diminished or B half whole diminished contains both those chords. But that's sort of the theory behind it, but the practical thing to do is start being able to put it into music, right? So if I'm playing a song like, let's say, All of Me, I always give that song as an example. The first chord is C. You have C for 2 measures. In those 2 measures, you can maybe go half measure C, half measure B diminished, full measure C, just to create some movement inside that C. Make a cadence in there. So C, right? Or so that's one side of using that diminished sound. But the other side of that is you can use, instead of B diminished, you can use C diminished. Right? That's C major, C diminished. Right? So those shapes are super useful. So it requires you to do that. Now, you can use that to move into minor chords too. I said I wouldn't get into that, but I'll show you some of that. So now let's take the same exact pair of diminished chords, right? Right, and see how it works into the relative minor. So key of C, A minor is the 6th chord. That first one, the one with the B in it, that's a pretty useful sound. That's kind of the sound going to an A minor triad. So again, that shape going to A minor. That shape, inversion of A minor. That same shape, A minor. That's a lick you hear Django play all the time, really as a lick, right? That's just that sound of that cadence. The other one, the diminished side of it, in minor, is just so close to the minor sound that it really doesn't sound like much. But it still works, right? I'm playing A diminished now instead of G sharp diminished here. Right? But then you really don't have a cadence. It doesn't sound like it's resolving anywhere. In the next inversion, maybe it's slightly hipper, just bluesy. This place, right, with the E flat on top, that sounds maybe even more hip. So just a way of visualizing it, remember that shape. Baby, you're awake? Will you remember that shape? Cool. So subscribe to our Facebook page for 99 cents a month, which is facebook.com/become supporter/Marvin Music. For more content like this, I post a lot of lessons there, and I'll see you next time. Hope it helps.